Now, about the individual lab tests, remember, any blood test is just a snapshot of what was happening in your bloodstream and in your body in that split second that needle was in your vein. It's a moment frozen in time. And consequently, if the lab tests you're looking at are a day old, 2 weeks old, your body has moved on from there. And don't realize or believe this is how I am, this is what is happening in my body. That's what was happening at the moment that blood sample was taken. But that's all. Don't give these numbers more power than they deserve. Second, if you remember from high school arithmetic, it takes 2 points to determine a straight line. What does that mean? Well, any given laboratory test, any blood test, just 1 point. Okay, you don't know if that line's going up or that line's going down. You don't know if that blood count is going up or your anemia's or your hemoglobin's going down. And so for that reason, don't be frightened by a single number on a single laboratory test. Okay, they're just, again, 1 point in time. And the best thing to do if there is an abnormal value, if there's no great urgency, if you're not bleeding out on the gurney there and, where something emergent must be done, the best thing to do is just repeat the test. Let a few days go by, a week go by, a month, 2 months, your doctor will determine, and repeat the test. Your body is a self-correcting organism, and most of these abnormal tests have a tendency to go back to normal. So again, don't give these numbers more power than they deserve, and don't think that 1 point in time is the total be-all and end-all picture of what's happening in your body. You are a dynamic organism. Remember, your body is constantly changing, minute to minute, hour to hour, certainly day to day and week to week, and at any time it's capable of tremendous self-healing and self-correcting of even these most extreme laboratory tests. So again, don't despair just because someone hands you a laboratory sheet with bunches of abnormal values on it. Now, why do we order these tests, and what does it really tell the doctor? Well, the standard blood tests that we order, the complete blood count, the chemistry profile, the tests that we're going to go over today, give us a picture of what's happening in your major organs in your body. They give us a good insight in what's happening in your bone marrow, in your kidneys, your liver, your thyroid gland, your parathyroid gland, your pancreas, the health of your arteries, and your immune system. That's the information that's on these tests, and if I know that if all these organs, after looking at these tests, I know that every one of your organs is functioning robustly, your liver's putting out plenty of albumin, your kidneys are filtering your blood, there's no inflammatory proteins in your bloodstream, I know this is a pretty healthy body. So that's what these tests tell us and why we order the tests, and because it's a survey of your major organs, you can call it, basically it's an organ recital, but not of the musical variety. I'm really excited about Digestion Made Easy because it reveals the secrets of this amazing system we have inside of us, our digestive system that lets us turn our food into you and me. We hear about these organs, your liver, your pancreas, your intestine. What do they do really, and how do you take care of them? No one ever gives us an operating manual for the human body, and that's what I've done here in the digestive system. We take a tour, we start up in the mouth and go all the way down through the digestive system. We meet the esophagus, stomach, pancreas, liver, small intestine, large intestine. We see how amazing these organs are, and we learn what can go wrong with them and how to take care of them. It's really an owner's manual for the digestive system. After watching this video, you'll have a much better idea about the best foods to not only nourish your body, but keep your digestive system working optimally. Problems like acid reflux and constipation, these are really common problems, but they have really simple solutions if you understand how your body works and how digestion proceeds. So in Digestion Made Easy, we go right into the details of how individual foods are digested, what foods make your body work the best, and how to avoid these problems like hemorrhoids and constipation and diverticulitis and hepatitis. We talk about these conditions and what you can do to keep your digestive system humming along like a prize automobile. Well, I've been privileged to work at True North Health Center in Santa Rosa, California for several years now, and it's a nutritionally based clinic, and we put people on really lean, clean, plant-based diets, and it really helps their medical problems tremendously. But an especially powerful tool that we use there is fasting. Fasting's been done for thousands of years, and it's a very, very powerful modality. I have been so impressed as a physician about what abstention from food can do, and even just for a few days, but certainly longer fasts have an amazing power. In this presentation, we talk exactly about how to do a fast, who should not fast, how to start the fast, what to expect during a fast, and how to break the fast, and how to do it safely. A medically supervised water fast or juice fast has so many powerful medical benefits to it that if there was a pill that lowered high blood pressure, helped you control or overcome type 2 diabetes, cooled off the hot joints of rheumatoid arthritis, settled down inflamed colons from Crohn's disease and colitis, and helped settle down your allergies, there's so many medical benefits. If there was a pill that did that, we'd all be rich. But instead, this very simple, elegant therapy that's been used for thousands of years can accomplish just that. However, it's got to be done right. And in fasting, we go into detail about what fasting is and how to do it safely, what to expect on a fast, who should fast and who should not fast, and when do you need medical supervision on a fast. These are very important things to know, as well as what to expect, how to begin the fast, what to expect during the fast, and how to break the fast. Such a powerful modality that's available to all of us, and it's introduced in this DVD presentation. And for those who'd like to listen in their car, we also have the soundtrack available on audio CD as well. So I'm very pleased and very proud of these, actually, because it revives interest in this very, very powerful modality that can really be a key to getting on to a level to overcome these serious diseases that haunt so many people these days. So if you've heard about fasting but not sure if it's right for you, then I urge you to get Fasting, the DVD or the CD version, and you'll have your questions answered and maybe have this remarkable therapy available to you. You are not recovering from a heart attack, etc. If you're a healthy person, and equally important, you are eating a whole food, plant-based diet with big salads and soups and greens, etc., not the processed junk out of stores and restaurants. If those two caveats are met, if you're healthy and your diet is really a whole food, plant-strong diet, then it would not be honest for me to say that a little pinch of salt is going to make lightning come down from the sky and strike you dead, or a half a teaspoon of sugar in your tea is going to have any terrible effects, or even a few drops of oil. I have to be honest with you, no, that's probably not going to be disastrous. They're probably benign in a healthy person eating a plant-based diet, not one all laced with salt and oil and sugar. But again, don't kid yourself. The dose makes the poison, and the more of that stuff you use, the riskier you are putting your health at, the higher risk you're making for your health. Your body is never not looking. You don't have to worry about what Dr. Klaper would say. What do your arteries have to say? Shakespeare said, "To thine own self be true." Dr. Klaper says, "To thine own health be true. To thine own arteries be true." And so there's no bargaining here. Just be honest and know that your body is never not looking. So when it comes to salt, sugar, and oils, consider an SOS-free diet, because none of these are probably the best. Okay, so it's easier than you think. It's not that hard. You can base your diet around whole plant foods. For breakfast at our place, we serve fruit and oatmeal. Lunches and dinners, salads, soups, and steamed greens, the three S's. So breakfast, again, fruit and oatmeal. Salad, at least once a day, if twice a day, have a big fresh salad. Plate of steamed greens should be a daily ritual. If you don't have a crock pot, they're the healthy eater's friend. You take a big pot of vegetable soup and have it on the counter and just keep eating it. If you're going out for the day, get a wide-mouth thermos jug, fill it full of soup, take it with you, eat it at stoplight, eat it between customers, just keep your belly full of healthy stuff that doesn't stick to you. You can certainly make stir fries, hot wok cold broth, like the Chinese chefs say. Get the wok hot, put in some vegetable broth, immediately fill it with those cold, wet, sloppy vegetables, quick stir fry and out. The vegetables were never allowed to burn. And for desserts and snacks, use all the wonderful fruits that nature gave us. So it's easier and simpler than you think to eat healthy, delicious food. Base your diet on whole plant foods. Not to worry about all this. It's more important that you're happy. And finally, as Spock in Star Trek said, live long and prosper. Happens. They are inevitably loaded with caffeine that takes calcium out of your bones and sets you up for osteoporosis. They are certainly acidic. They dissolve your teeth. Ask any dentist. And it's a bizarre thing to be doing, to run these sweeteners through our body day after day. Why? Young girls are very figure conscious, and they drink these diet sodas starting at age 10. Well, that young girl has 2 ovaries, and in those ovaries are all the eggs she's going to ovulate throughout her life. They're already there in form. Those are her children in her ovaries, okay? And she's worried about her figure, so she starts drinking diet sodas. And she drinks 1 or 2 or 3 of them a day. And all through her teens and her 20s, for 20 years she's been running aspartame through the ova in her ovaries. And then she gets pregnant to have the baby. What does that chemical bath for 20 years do to that child's chance of having a cleft palate or a heart defect or developing childhood leukemia later? Nobody knows, but it's a bizarre experiment to do. Do not take comfort and think these are good things, these are good substitutes for standard cola drinks. They're not. The best drinking beverage, of course, is good old water, and I urge everyone to become a water drinker. But I like cold, sweet, fizzy drinks after a hot bike ride or a softball game. So what do? Easy. Make my own. And you can too. Get yourself some cold fizzy water, some seltzer water, get your favorite fruit juice, put 2 fingers of fruit juice in the bottom of a glass and fill it up with cold fizzy water, throw in an ice cube, make your own soft drinks. No caffeine, no high fructose corn syrup, and you get a lot more mileage, you get a lot more volume out of your purchase than paying the cola companies. All right, what about chocolate? Oh no, not chocolate, don't let them take away chocolate, no. Well, the studies are in, and it turns out that 2 squares of dark chocolate daily seem to be not excessively harmful. Yay! Note to the physicians in the audience, I said not excessively harmful. I didn't say it's good for you, but it doesn't seem to have any adverse effects. But milk chocolate is congealed butter, fat, and sugar, and you don't want to be eating that stuff. How about bread? It's a carbohydrate. If you're going to be eating bread, I pretty much stopped eating bread. So it makes me feel like I got a bowling ball in my stomach. I use lettuce wraps now for sandwiches. I put my hummus on lettuce wraps or collard wraps. But if you're going to be eating bread, make sure it's whole grain bread where you can see the actual whole grains in the face of the bread slice there. If you're going to be eating grain, make them whole grains, not white rice. Rice cookers make life easier. They'll cook not only rice, but millet, quinoa, barley. And if you want something sweet, become a fruit eater. You'll get a lot more enjoyment with a lot less guilt and damage to your body. Okay, we've done salt, we've done sugar. Let's move on to oils. Yeah, a little bit of chemistry here. We got to talk about saturated, unsaturated fats. What are they? Well, just to make it real simple, here's a saturated fat. It's just a long chain of carbon atoms. And all you need to know right now is that saturated fats are rigid rods. And because they're rigid rods, they will stack up like cordwood. And as they get colder, they start stacking up into stable configurations. And as a result, saturated fats are solid at room temperature. That is different, however, than unsaturated fats, because unsaturated fats have a little kink in them. And because they have this little kink in them, they don't stack up evenly. And so even though they get colder, they have a hard time nestling in with each other. And as a result, they will tend to stay liquid at room temperature, and that defines an oil. So oils are unsaturated fats that stay liquid at room temperature. So vegetable oils are liquid fat. That's what they are, including olive oil. They are liquid fats. Now, they're not evil. Fats are essential. People don't want to eat fat. Yes, you do. We store energy, 4 times the starvation. But your hormones are made of fats. Your estrogens and progesterone and testosterone and cortisol, they're made of fats. Your skin oils are made of fats. Your nerves are wrapped in fats. We need fats. You need some every day. The right kind, small amounts, but you need them. And the body uses fats to turn on and off inflammatory reactions. Now, why would you want to turn on inflammation? Well, you got a sliver in your leg. You want an inflammatory reaction. It's the first stage of healing. It brings in white blood cells to eat up the germs, brings in cells to begin the healing process. But, so you want to be able to turn on the inflammatory reaction. Plus, it hurts, and it calls your attention that you got a sliver in your skin. But once you take the sliver out, now you want to turn off the inflammatory reaction. So the body wants to both turn on and turn off inflammatory reactions, and it uses fats to do that, a special kind of fats called prostaglandins. So here's the last bit of chemistry. We do have to talk about the omega-3 and omega-6 issue, but it's real simple. This is the oil that's found in flax seeds. It's an omega-3. Why? Because the chemists look, this is the alpha end, this is the omega end, and he's looking for this configuration called a double bond. And so the chemist says, where's the first double bond? Well, you run into it, carbon atom number 1, 2, 3. That makes this an omega-3 fatty acid. So what? Well, the so what is that this turns off inflammation. It's an anti-inflammatory fat. As opposed to this one, this is linoleic acid in corn oil. And you can see you run into the first double bond of carbon atom number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That makes this an omega-6 fatty acid. So what? Well, the so what is that this turns on inflammation. This is pro-inflammatory. So if you've got inflammation in your body, omega-3 fats are your friend. They are anti-inflammatory, and it's found in flax and hemp and chia and walnuts and soy and green vegetables. But if inflammation is an issue, you don't want pro-inflammatory oils like corn oil, safflower, sunflower, etc. So what you should do is focus on getting the omega-3 fats. The omega-6s are everywhere. We eat way too much of those. Where are the omega-3s found? All green leafy vegetables have omega-3 fats. Make it a ritual. Steam some greens every day. Squeeze some lemon juice on it. But it doesn't matter, collard, kale, broccoli, chard, Brussels sprouts. Eat something green, it's got omega-3 fats in it. This should be a staple on your table. How much do you need of omega-3s? You need 1.5 to 2 grams. Again, that's half to 2/3 of a pennyweight. Well, a cup of broccoli will get you 1/10 of the way there. So 10 cups of broccoli will meet your omega-3 needs. Who eats 10 cups of broccoli? Well, you don't have to, because nature packed a lot of omega-3s in flax seeds and walnuts and chia seeds. Over half the oils in flax seeds are omega-3s. So that comes down to just a handful of walnuts will basically meet your omega-3 needs. A tablespoon of ground flax on your oatmeal will get you pretty much all the way there. So some green vegetables, a couple of walnuts, and a little flax on your morning oatmeal will easily help you make your omega-3 needs. One last piece of chemistry. The flax has the omega-3s in it, but here's that same linoleic acid that I showed you. Here's the omega-3. But this isn't really what your body needs. This is 18 carbon atoms long. What your body really needs is 22 carbon atoms long. It's four carbons longer, and that stuff is called DHA. And we need it for cell membranes and nerve functions and anti-inflammatory effects and immune function. We really need this is the omega-3 we really need. Now, how much do we need? About 300 milligrams of it. And your body can make this out of the 2 to 3 grams of omega-3s in the greens, etc. About 10% of the 3 grams turns into the 300 of DHA. Well, that's all nice, but, big but. The junky omega-6 oils from safflower, corn oil, cottonseed oil, etc., they will steal the enzymes that your body needs to make DHA. Which is why you don't want to be a junk food eater, because the chips are fried in corn oil and safflower oil and all these omega-6 oils that steal the enzymes, and it'll leave you short of DHA. Okay. So while we're on the topic of oils, let's deal with fish oil. Is fish oil necessary? I mean, it's rich in DHA. Fish oil is loaded with DHA, and my friends with arthritis and inflammatory conditions, they really want that fish oil because it's full of DHA. Let's be very clear about this. Ready? Fish do not make DHA. Fish don't make it. Where does it come from? There's a lot of DHA in fish oil. How'd it get there if fish don't make it? DHA is made by algae cells, free-floating plant cells in the ocean. That's where the DHA is made. Fish swim in the ocean with their mouths open, swallowing the algae. So this is algal DHA that gets into the fish's muscle. The fish did not make it. So the omega-3 DHA in fish oil is really derived from algae. If you haven't heard, the fish are disappearing. And those that are left are filled with pollutants like pesticides and mercury. Why don't we let the fish off the hook here? Okay? They are now growing these algae-producing cells in big vats of pure seawater, and they harvest the algae and extract the DHA directly from the algae. So if you want DHA, go to the natural food store and look for algae-derived DHA in veggie caps. How much do you need? Well, one veggie cap has about 300 milligrams, so that's what you need. And so one, maybe two, if you have inflammation in the body, is all you need. Okay, so this is where to get your DHA if you need it in a supplement form, but again, the greens, the nuts, and the seeds should furnish it for you. So, oils, healthy versus unhealthy. What do you do about it? First of all, eat dark leafy greens. Not only do they have omega-3 fats, but they have calcium. This is where cows get their calcium. Cows don't drink milk. People ever think about that? Yeah. Where do they get all that calcium? From the green plants they're eating, and that's where we should get our calcium as well. Greens also have magnesium in them as well. And again, you get the healthy omega-3s out of ground flax, walnuts, chia seeds, etc. And if you need it, get some algae-derived DHA. You want to avoid junky oils like corn oil, cottonseed, the processed food type oils. And you can do that if you read the labels. There's a couple things you're looking for, and one of them is that term, partially hydrogenated. Why? What are partially hydrogenated oils? They are thickened oils, and the problem is that they contain this stuff called trans fatty acids, and these are nasty fats. They're stiff and rigid. They don't work well in the cells. They injure your arteries and make membranes unstable that increase the risk for cancer. Read the labels, they must tell you. You will see it. If you see the words partially hydrogenated, don't buy it and certainly don't eat it. Have a look. Commercial peanut butter doesn't separate because it's full of partially hydrogenated soybean oil and fully hydrogenated vegetable oils, rapeseed oil, soybean oil. If you see the word hydrogenated, don't eat it. It's in dry products as well. Here's somebody's breakfast cereal here, partially hydrogenated cottonseed oil, soybean oil. You see those words, partially hydrogenated, do not buy it and eat it. And if you want to avoid it, know the fast food industry relies on partially hydrogenated fats. That's what gives the food their mouthfeel that keeps bringing the customers back. And so you want to avoid these types of junky processed food. They're full of trans fatty acids. So, eat food as grown, as Dr. Hans Diehl says, which brings us around to restaurant food. It's delicious, and as a bachelor, I used to live in restaurants, and my blood pressure was up, and I was carrying 10 pounds too much. The reality is that restaurant food is ethnic flavored salt, sugar, and fat. When my friends ask me to go out for dinner, I say, let's see, well, do I want Italian flavored salt, sugar, and fat? Ooh, maybe Chinese salt, sugar, and fat. Ooh, haven't had East Indian salt, sugar, and fat in a while. Ooh, Thai flavored salt, sugar, and fat's really nice. Restaurant food is full of salt and sugar and fat. That's what makes it taste so good. That's what the chefs are putting in the ingredients back in the kitchen there. And then they serve it to you with seared flesh or overcooked vegetables. It's the reality. Does that mean you should never ever step foot in a restaurant? You're going to have to. There's social pressures, etc., to do that. All I can tell you is that don't kid yourself that anything healthy is happening in those kitchens. They're not. And you don't want to eat a whole lot of it. I've gotten my restaurant eating down to very seldom as possible. Less is more when it comes to restaurant meals. And you know what I do before I go out to eat? I eat. And I have a salad or a bowl of soup at home, so I'm not famished when I walk into a restaurant. I don't polish off half the basket of bread before the waiter gets there. So eat before you go, and order as healthily as possible. Order the vegetable soup, the steamed greens, eat it, and get the heck out of there as soon as you can. Okay. So let's get to it in the back of everybody's mind. What about olive oil? Oh, no, not olive oil. It's heart healthy. There's a lot of literature back and forth about olive oil. And I'm not going to wait around in this study and that study, but I'm going to tell you some facts that are absolutely indisputable about olive oil. Both animal fats and vegetable oils are fats, and they all have 9 calories in every gram. A tablespoon of olive oil has 13.5 grams of fat, and every tablespoon has 120 calories in every tablespoon. As a result, you're a big olive oil fan. Liquid oils will help do that. And very importantly, it'll keep you there. If you are overweight or your friend's overweight and they're trying to lose weight and they are eating olive oil, they are kidding themselves. It's going to keep you stuck. It is liquid fat. That I can tell you. So yes, olive oil has some adverse health effects, and mostly it contributes to obesity. And studies have been done. They've looked at overweight women in Greece. The Greeks, by the way, are the fattest country in Europe. They have the highest rate of obesity of all the European nations. And when they looked at the women who were obese, 55% of the fat came from olive oil. It sticks to you. So the reality is olive oil is really dense with calories. It is the most calorie-dense food we have, 4,000 calories in every pound. We're trying to get a 4-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. Olive oil ratio is 14-to-1 omega-6 versus omega-3. And we're trying to lower saturated fat. They want no more than 7% saturated fat in our diet. Olive oil is 14% saturated fat. How does pouring 14% saturated fat help you get to your intake of 7%? It's irrational. The take I'm trying to get there is that pouring olive oil on foods does not suddenly make them heart healthy. This salad is not being made heart healthier because this poor person is pouring olive oil on it. These greens are perfectly heart healthy on their own, even more so. The meal this person is about to eat would not be classified as heart healthy. If she pours some olive oil on her salad before eating the sandwich, it is still not a heart-healthy meal. It is still not a Mediterranean dinner she's having here, even though she poured olive oil on her salad. This is what Mediterranean diet has become. Oh, I've used olive oil on my salad. Unhealthy eating is unhealthy eating. This is how your blood looks after you eat rice and beans. You eat an oil, you eat a meal filled with fats and oils, and this lovely clear blood turns into a substance that looks like this. Not everybody shows this grossly, but this is fat in the bloodstream. This is lipemia. And every time you eat a fatty meal, a wave of fat goes through your bloodstream. As I said, not everybody shows it this densely, but everyone has a wave of fat going through their bloodstream when they eat fatty foods. Remember, your body is never not looking. You can't tell your body, look over here and have a cheeseburger down there. What's that? Your arteries know, your liver knows, your heart knows. If you are going to be eating a gooey, greasy pizza like that, it's going to turn your blood fatty. Even if you pour olive oil on your salad, before you eat this greasy piece of pizza, it's still going to turn your blood fatty. Your body is not fooled. It's never not looking. Don't kid yourself about olive oil making things heart healthy. Spaghetti Alfredo with a little bit of bacon and egg yolks there to make it really challenging. This is dripping with oil. If you then pour some olive oil on your salad before you eat the Alfredo, do not think this is now a heart-healthy meal. It's become a cover for the rationalization of atrociously dangerous eating. Again, your body's never not looking. It's not good to make your blood fatty with any oil after you eat. And as Dr. Esselstyn is trying to tell us, the olive oil and all these refined oils, they're not friendly to your arteries. They make your arteries stiff, and they keep your arteries from dilating and relaxing in response to nitric oxide, which helps keep our tissues healthy by allowing blood to be delivered to them. And this has been documented. Dr. Vogel has given people food with olive oil in it and to study the effects of their arteries. And he looked at the Mediterranean diet on endothelial function. And he blew a blood pressure cuff. He gave them some olive oil, blew a blood pressure cuff for a few minutes, deflated it. And instead of the usual increase in blood flow, there was no increase in blood flow. Olive oil paralyzes the blood vessels from the normal dilation. It's not friendly to artery stuff. And as they said in the study, in terms of their postprandial, that means after eating effect on endothelial function, the beneficial components of the Mediterranean diet and Leon Heart Study diets appear to be the antioxidant-rich foods, including the vegetables, fruits, and their derivatives. Most likely the heart benefits of the Mediterranean diet are due to it being basically a vegetarian diet. They're probably getting healthier in spite of the olive oil, not because of it. So don't see olive oil as a health food. Pouring oil on your food is pouring oil on your food. You don't really want to do, there's no reason to do it medically or nutritionally, and it leads you places you don't want to go. So, no, he's taking away olive oil too. What do we do without olive oil? Well, what do you really use olive oil for? Two things. You stir fry your veggies in it, and you make salad dressing with it. That's about all you really use it for. Well, you can certainly stir fry your vegetables in seasoned vegetable broth. It works just as well with a nonstick pan. No reason that you have to use olive oil. In fact, you don't want to use olive oil. It breaks down in the skillet. Never heat olive oil if you are going to be using it. Well, what about salad dressings? Well, you can certainly make salad dressing without oil. We do it at our clinic 3 times a day. You just take a blender, put some fresh vegetables in it, maybe half an apple, maybe a piece of an orange slice, and hit the button, and turns into salad dressing. Want a little fat in there, throw in a piece of avocado or a couple of walnuts. It's easy to make salad dressings without olive oil. You don't need the stuff. And then again, the whole world of flavored vinegars, lots of ways to make the salad dressings taste good. So what's the take home of all of this? Where do we go with all this? Salt, sugar, and oils. Outside of a little bit in whole foods that nature naturally put there, these are not health foods. They are taste treats. Have that firmly in your understanding. And they are too easy to use too much of, and that's the problem. There's salt in the restaurant and packaged foods. We eat sugar as a food. We're pouring oil over our foods. And the result is the hospitals are filled with people with strokes, heart attacks, colon cancers, etc. So for that reason, more and more nutritionally oriented physicians, dietitians, etc. are saying, you know, Americans and people eating a Western diet have clearly shown that moderation does not work. They cannot do it. A little bit turns into a lot. And so for that reason, the policy that a lot of us are coming to is, you know, when it comes to added salt, added sugar, added oils, none is probably the best. Just don't use the stuff and throw the oils out. And that leaves you at the interesting position of having an SOS-free diet, salt, oil, and sugar-free diet, eating style. So, does this mean you can never, ever have salt? That if you even think about reaching for that salt shaker, Dr. Clapper will appear in a puff of smoke and slap your wrists? No, not going to do that. If you are a healthy person, and I have to start with that, if you don't have high blood pressure, you are not overweight, you are not battling some inflammatory disease, the plant, through chlorophyll, is able to split the water molecule apart and put it on each of the carbon atoms. And it's added a molecule of water to each of the carbon atoms is what it's done. Okay, can you see there's a water molecule stuck on each one of the carbon atoms? Well, to add water to something is to hydrate it, correct? So, if you hydrate a carbon compound, you create a... Okay. This is where the term comes from. It's a carbohydrate. You know, carbs. Don't want to eat those bad carbs. I hate that term. They're carbohydrates. Now you know why. Sugars are carbohydrates. They're very useful. Here's that glucose molecule we just looked at. If it's combined with a 5-carbon sugar called fructose, that double sugar is called sucrose. That's table sugar. If you take this same glucose molecule over here, but instead of connecting it with a fructose, you connect it with this sugar called galactose, that double sugar is called lactose. And we probably all owe our lives to lactose because this is the sugar that makes breast milk sweet. And if breast milk didn't taste sweet, then infants wouldn't nurse at their mother's breast, and we'd probably all die in infancy. So sugars are very, very handy. And as the chlorophyll pigment in the green leaf closes that ring, it locks energy in like a coiled spring. It uses the sun's energy to close the ring here, and there's energy stored in there. And when we eat the sugars and move it into our cells and break that ring, we get the energy back to run our cells. We are creatures that run on sunlight, and it's the sugar molecules that bring the sun's energy into our bodies. Now, the plant makes the sugars to store the sun's energy, but the plant wants to store the sugars over the winter. The potato plant wants to store the sugars to make it through the winter. The barley plant, the rice plant, the corn plant wants to wrap a little bit of sugar around the seedlings so they have a little bit of energy to get up to the surface of the soil in the springtime when the spring rains come. How do plants store these sugars that they make? Well, they link the sugars together into long chains, and long chains are called starch. So here you see schematically all these S's. These are sugar molecules all linked together, and they are glucose and fructose, etc. We eat the potato, we eat the grains, and we have enzymes in our saliva and our pancreas that break the bonds in the starch molecules so we can then absorb these sugars and transport them to our cells to do good things with. Now, where are they found? They are found in all whole foods. Fruits, of course, have lots of sugars. That's why we like them and eat them. Starchy vegetables, as I mentioned, and grains also have sugars stored in the form of starches. So here's a high-carb diet that is good for you. Okay, do not run away from these carbohydrates. They are beneficial for you because they are loaded with vitamins and minerals and wonderful things for your body along with these sugars. Now, what are sugars good for? Well, as I mentioned, we burn them for energy. Our cells use sugar molecules to throw back and forth to turn reactions on and off. And we make things out of sugars. The mucus in our nose and our intestinal tract that allows our food to slide along our intestine, those are mucopolysaccharides. They are also sugar-based molecules. Now, we humans love the taste of sugar on our tongue. Boy, we seek it out. We grow plants that produce lots of sugar in their sap, and we cut them down and we harvest that sugar. We concentrate it and harvest it. Sugarcane juice is high in sugars, and we grow it and harvest it and extract the sugars. Our friends out in North Dakota and Minnesota grow sugar beets, one of the most concentrated forms of sugar on the planet. And we grind these up along with the sugarcane juice, and we mix them with water, and then we evaporate the water off, and what crystallizes out is white table sugar. Notice what we've done. We've taken a whole natural plant substance like sugar beetroot, sugar cane stalks, and we've turned them into a white powder. Humans seem to get into trouble when we turn whole plants into white powders. And we do the same thing with our foods. When you eat whole grain rice, whole grain barley, it takes hours for that grain of rice or barley to be broken down in your intestinal tract, for the enzymes to get into the starch molecules and start taking apart the starches and into sugars and absorbing them. It takes hours. Blood sugars rise very slowly. But you send that whole grain to the miller, and they grind it into a white powder called flour. You have lost the fiber, you have lost the whole grain properties of this substance, and as a result, the blood sugar skyrockets when you eat refined carbohydrates. We say the food now has a high glycemic index. Glyco is the Greek name for sugar. Emic means in the blood, so this is a high amount of sugar in the blood. So what? Well, here's the so what. Normally, when you eat whole grains, whole plant products, as I said, it takes time for the sugars to find their way into the bloodstream. The sugar rises very gradually in the bloodstream. Some insulin is put out, and the sugar moves down out into the cells for metabolism. Doesn't cause a lot of upset in the bloodstream or throughout the body. But you drink a cola drink, you eat a candy bar, you flood the system with sugars. The sugar in the bloodstream skyrockets. And it's during this time when the blood is running thick with sugar that evil things are happening in your body. What's wrong with a flood of sugars through your tissues? Well, you know what happens every time you spill maple syrup on your kitchen table. Everything gets sticky. The chemists say everything, the molecules in your body become glycosylated. They become sticky with sugar. Not a good thing. These are the normal connective tissues in your muscles and in your ligaments. These are fibers of collagen, and they are flexible, and they slide along each other, and they're a beautiful network of cables that support your body. But you eat that candy bar, you have a donut, you flood it with sugars, and the sugar molecules start sticking to the protein chains. And a sugar molecule will grab one protein chain and another, and you start getting what's called cross-linking of the proteins. And at that point, the collagen fibers, the muscle fibers start becoming stiff. And then when they're moved, on a microatomic level, they start to crack and break. This is not a good thing. You don't want to flood your tissues and make them sticky, because everything in the body becomes sticky. The hemoglobin in your blood becomes sticky with sugar. The elastic fibers in your skin become sticky with sugar. The inner lining of your blood vessels become sticky with sugar. The lens of your eye becomes sticky with sugar. Not a good thing. Why? Well, this man told us why. This is Henri Maillard. Henri Maillard was a French chemist that was hired by the French baking industry in the 1880s to help them understand the chemistry of baking bread. What happens when we bake bread? The bakers wanted to know. Well, it didn't take Maillard very long to figure out what happens when you bake bread. He says, what happens? When you bake bread, you take sugar, the pastry flour, and protein, wheat gluten, and you put them together and heat them up. Sugar plus protein plus heat. And that creates what's called the Maillard reaction. You know the effect of the Maillard reaction. You see it every time you look at a loaf of bread. This is what makes bread brown. This is Maillard protein. This is the result of the Maillard reaction. Well, that's all well and good, I guess, on a French baguette, but you do not want to run the Maillard reaction in your own tissues. And it happens. There's plenty of protein around. It's not gluten. It's your albumin and your fibrinogen and your collagen and the proteins throughout your body. You then flood them with sugars from that candy bar or that soft drink, and your body supplies the heat. We're all 98.6 degree ovens. This is the three components of the Maillard reaction. And the Maillard reaction happens, and those lovely collagen fibers and elastic fibers and albumin in your bloodstream undergo the Maillard reaction. They turn from these individual protein strands to this mass of oxidized, bastardized, stiff proteins that are really not good for anything. The scientists, the chemists tell us you've created an advanced glycation end product. Don't worry about the name. Remember the initials. AGE, this ages your tissue. Eating sugar as a food ages you. It's one of the major factors about why we don't age so well, because of what we're eating. Now, this has some consequences. Run the Maillard reaction on the elastin fibers in your skin. In your skin, you got spiral proteins called elastin that give your skin its spring and its elasticity. Well, you run the Maillard reaction on them by flooding them with sugars, and those elastic fibers become stiff, and they begin to crack and break and oxidize, and the skin ages. You run the Maillard reaction in those nice clear proteins in the lens of your eye, and that sets you up for forming cataracts. This is no joke, folks. You don't want to eat this stuff and flood your system with sugars. And you sure don't want to run the Maillard reaction on the inner lining of the capillaries of your brain. This is the membrane across which oxygen has to get to supply the brain cells with oxygen. It's really important not to run the Maillard reaction haphazardly in your body. Eating sugar as a food ages you. Now, as I'm taking all the fun out of eating here, and before I freak out everyone with a sweet tooth, which includes me, let me just make this very clear. The problem is not with a half a teaspoon of sugar in your tea as a flavoring. One pass through your liver, that's gone, okay? Tiny amount, because that's the appropriate use for these sweeteners as a flavoring. The problem I'm talking about is eating sugar as a food. Eating sugar as a food? Who does that? Who sits down at a sugar bowl and starts shoveling sugar in as a food? I don't know anybody who would eat sugar as a food. Do you know anybody who eats sugar as a food? I have no idea who in the world would even consider eating sugar as a food. Folks, when you're holding a candy bar in your hand, it's a chunk of sugar in your hand, and you're thinking about putting it in your mouth and flooding your tissues with it. You don't want to eat it as a food. People have no illusions as you're walking down the street in front of a bakery and that lovely flavor, the aroma wafts up your nose. Have no illusions what they're doing in there. They're baking sugar in there. They may add flour and eggs and water to it and want you to and turn it into some pastry, but they're baking sugar and they want you to come in and eat a big chunk of it. Even if you add milk to it and freeze it, it's still sugar. You don't want to eat it as a food. It's one of the major health problems that we're facing, and you sure don't want to drink it. Good heavens. Cola drinks used to come in little 8-ounce cans. They're all in the Smithsonian now. Nobody drinks out of 8-ounce cans now. But those who are old enough to remember it, an 8-ounce can is 27 grams of sugar in it. That's 5.5 teaspoons of sugar, a little 8-ounce can of cola. But nobody drinks that anymore. You go down to the convenience store and you get a big 20-ounce Slurpee, 13 teaspoons of sugar in a 20-ounce bottle. Would you tell your kid, go have 13 teaspoons of sugar and then go do your homework? You know? But we have no qualms with them going to the store and downing one of these several times a day even. Since 1950, soft drink consumption in America has gone up by 4 times. The average American is consuming a gallon a week of soft drinks. That's 25 tablespoons a week just in soft drinks. And since I'm not drinking any of it, somebody's doing 50 tablespoons out there. Now people say, well, I don't drink soft drinks, I just drink fruit juice. Well, if you're drinking commercial fruit juice, don't kid yourself, you're drinking sugar water. Okay, here are common soft drinks. You can see an 8-ounce serving has, again, that 26, 27 grams. Here's commercial grape juice, 36 grams of sugar in an 8-ounce serving. Here's a commercial cranberry juice cocktail, 31 grams. Commercial fruit juice is sugar water, and it ages you. In America, the average person is now consuming 150 pounds of sugar per year. That's almost a half a pound of sugar a day. Now, people say, I don't eat a half a pound of sugar a day. Oh, yeah? Go to your favorite burger restaurant. This audience probably doesn't spend a lot of time, but Americans go to burger restaurants, order a burger, fries, and a Coke. Sugar in the bun, sugar in the ketchup, sugar in the relish, sugar in the cheese, sugar in the meat, sugar in the batter on the fries, sugar in the drink. They are selling sugar in there, and we are eating it by the metric ton, and the results are staggering, literally. One sugar seems to be the most detrimental of all. That's high fructose corn syrup. It's cheap, it's plentiful, and it's stable. And the processed food makers love the stuff. Your body does not. High fructose corn syrup does some things in your body you don't want any part of. It's strongly associated with making your liver fatty, with making you more resistant to insulin and making your type 2 diabetes worse. It elevates triglyceride levels. It raises high blood pressure to higher levels. It can damage the kidneys. Certainly contributes to that big fat abdominal fat pad so many Americans carry with them. And it certainly rots your teeth. So, start becoming a reader of labels. The second ingredient, high fructose corn syrup. They tell you right on the label. Know that all commercial candies are basically congealed high fructose corn syrup. And the consequences are fairly startling. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't just make giraffes fat. We are faced with a tsunami of childhood obesity bearing down on us, and this poor lad is faced not only with the psychological burden of being the fat kid in gym class, but also is hanging over him as the specter of type 2 diabetes. I don't even use the term adult onset diabetes anymore because we're seeing it in children so often these days, but this child is facing the medical horror parade of blindness, kidney failure, amputations, intensive care unit stays. This will bankrupt the medical system. These red bars show the increase in obesity in children from 1976 to 2000. This black line is the consumption of high fructose corn syrup during the same years. So, sugar. It's not evil. We need it for energy, and we signal ourselves with it, and we make things out of it. It's not evil stuff, but it ages our tissues, and it also does something else. When you eat sugar in large amounts, what are you doing? You're putting sugars down in your intestines where it's dark and moist and warm. Well, put sugars anywhere where it's dark and moist and warm, and what do you think is going to happen? You know what happens. Yeast and mold grows on it, and it happens in our intestinal tract. Everyone in their intestines has a yeast called Candida albicans. It's a normal inhabitant, usually doesn't cause any problems, but you feed it with all sorts of sugars, and you can get an overgrowth of Candida that does some not good things in your gut. Here's the intestinal lining here. Here is the food stream moving along here. And the job of the intestine is to pull nutrients out of the food and put them into our bloodstream. Does a good job of that. But there's an important barrier function involved here. There's a lot of things going by in the food stream you do not want in your bloodstream. Undigested food proteins, you know, and fragments of wheat and corn in your bloodstream. The breakdown product of bacteria, etc. You don't want that in the bloodstream. And a healthy gut lining does not allow that to happen. But you allow Candida and other pathogenic organisms to set up housekeeping in the gut lining here, and they injure the gut lining. And this lovely barrier starts turning into this. Molecular spaces open up between the cells, and big molecules that have no business getting into your bloodstream start leaking into your bloodstream. This is the so-called leaky gut syndrome. Funny name, not funny condition, because these fragments of various food proteins and other foreign molecules flow through tissues throughout the body. And as they do, they can set off autoimmune diseases. It's diagnosed, by the way, don't just think that you have one. It's diagnosed with a urine test that your doctor can order for intestinal permeability. But it can, as it flows through joint membranes, can set off things like rheumatoid arthritis. It flows through your immune cells, may set off lupus. Flows through your bronchial membranes, makes asthma worse. Flows through your skin, can set off hives. There are a lot of adverse effects, all stemming from the sugar eating that sets up abnormal microbes in your intestine. If you want to know how to cure this, it can be cured. You're constantly growing a new gut lining. There are ways to repair the leaky gut. I went into this extensively in my DVD presentation of Sense and Nonsense in Nutrition. You can get that here or off the website. So sugars. The good, it's a great fuel. We need it for energy, no doubt about it. But bad, it ages our tissues and promotes leaky gut development if you eat it in huge amounts, which then leads to the ugly things like obesity and diabetes and tooth decay and strokes and heart attacks, etc., etc. So, eating sugar keeps us stuck. If you need a little visual, if you're a visual person, and you need a little motivation the next time you're tempted by that candy bar, here's a little visual to remember. This woman is about to do that act I have warned you against. She's about to eat sugar as a food. Watch what happens in just 18 months. Want to see that one again? All right, fair enough. Okay. Eating sugar as a food ages you. It's not what it's for. That's food abuse. That's sugar abuse. It's a flavoring, not a food. So what do you do about it? Well, nature wants us to enjoy sweet flavoring. She makes it real easy to find, makes it brightly colored, hangs from trees, usually within reach. So become a fruit eater. Have a mango, have a banana, have a bunch of cherries for your sweets. Use fruits for snacks and desserts. Use them in cooking. If you're going to make oatmeal, throw some raisins or some dates into the oatmeal. Use natural sweeteners. And please, make it a point, if you can, to eat as consciously as you can. Just because they're fruits does not mean it's a good thing to sit in front of the television set with 2 pounds of dried apricots and shovel them in between commercials. That is gluttony. We've become a nation of shovelers. We shovel food in when we're driving, we shovel it in when we're watching TV, we shovel it in every place we can. That apricot farmer went to great trouble to grow that fruit and to harvest it and to ship it into the marketplace. I tell my people, honor the people who provide the food. You're going to eat an apricot slice, wonderful. Turn off the television. Pick up the piece of apricot. I'm going to eat a piece of apricot now. Looks, lovely color, nice aroma. Bite it, a little chewy, a little crunchy, a little tart, sweet, lovely. And make apricot puree in your mouth. And let your tongue slather around it and inhale it and put a little behind your ears. Be with the experience of apricot eating, okay? You've heard of be here now, eat here now. Just become an apricot eater and enjoy the experience. And then swallow it down. Say, oh, that was lovely. I think I'll have the rest of it. And put the piece of apricot in your mouth and chew it up into apricot puree and swallow it down. And then after you're through, that was lovely, I think I'll have another. And if you do this, you'll only eat 5 of them or 10 of them. You won't do the whole ½ pound. Okay? And by the way, if you're eating dried fruit, soak them overnight. Put them in fresh water. They plump up, they hydrate into this beautiful, chewy food. And you will only eat 5 or 6 of those if you rehydrate them. Soak your nuts as well. Almonds soften and crunch up very nicely when you soak them. But anyway, become a conscious eater and enjoy your fruits. So let's talk a couple other corollaries to this sweet issue here. How about diet sodas? Well, they don't work, first of all. They have done studies where they've given people trying to lose weight diet sodas, regular sodas. Diet sodas do not help in weight loss. There's various reasons why that.
All right, folks, our next speaker, our next presenter is Dr. Michael Klaper. Yeah, let's hear it. Dr. Klaper is staff physician for True North Health Center, as well as the McDougall program in Santa Rosa, California. A gifted teacher and a humorous lecturer, Dr. Klaper noticed early on the relationship between diet and health, leading him to begin implementing a nutritionally based therapies in his practice. And the results of these therapies were dramatic. And nearly all of his patients who switched to a plant-powered diet soon became leaner and more energetic, and their cholesterol and blood pressure came down to much safer levels. Dr. Klaper believes strongly that proper nutrition and a balanced lifestyle are essential for health, and in many cases make the difference between healing an illness versus simply treating symptoms. Dr. Klaper has recently produced some incredibly valuable and very entertaining video lectures on how your digestion works, on water-only fasting, on understanding what your blood results mean, and a new one called Common Sense versus Nonsense in the Nutritional World. You can get copies from our store. They are excellent. It gives me tremendous honor to introduce to you Dr. Michael Klaper.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here to address you today. In today's presentation, we're going to have a look at 3 of America's favorite flavorings, the king of condiments in the standard Western diet. I'm referring, of course, to salt, sugar, and oils. These substances have gotten a great deal of adverse publicity in recent years, and some of it's justified, perhaps some not. These are not inherently evil substances. In fact, most of them have some essential role in the human diet. The salt is essential for cellular transmission, which you'll see. Sugars are energy, and oils have various uses. And so they're not necessarily evil, but if you consume them in too great a quantities, they have some bad effects. And if you consume them in the quantities that most Americans and Western people do, they have downright ugly effects. So we are going to have a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. We're going to take a look at each of these. We're going to talk about what they are chemically, what they are good for, what's wrong if you have too much of them, and what do you do about it if you want to reduce these substances in your diet and still enjoy the foods that you're eating. So we're going to start with salt. What's salt? Well, everybody knows it's that white crinkly stuff in the salt shaker on the table there. What is it really? The chemists tell us it's an atom of sodium attached to an atom of chlorine. And they're held together by their magnetic charges, and because the magnetic charges go out in all 6 directions, left to right, top to bottom, front to back, then every sodium atom can contact and hold 6 chloride ions, and every chloride ion is in contact with 6 sodiums. That's what creates a crystal of salt. And when you put the salt in water, the water neutralizes the magnetic charges holding the crystal together, and the crystal falls apart, and that's why salt dissolves in water. When salt dissolves in water, you get a solution of both the sodium and the chloride, and it's the sodium ions that cause most of the problem, and we want to focus on that. Now, where is salt found? It's found in all living tissues in small amounts and in the same concentration as in your tissues. The concentration of sodium inside a leaf of kale or a piece of carrot is the same concentration that you have in your cells. And for that reason, there is no need to actually add any salt. It's already in the foods that you are eating. Salt is also added at the table, though nowadays people say, oh, I don't salt my food anymore. Actually, that's the most controllable way to add salt into your diet. The way that most people consume it, however, in the West, is what is in processed foods, because it's in there in large amounts, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's already in the sauces and the gravies. And then there's the whole issue of restaurant meals, which are invariably loaded with salt, and we'll talk about that as we progress. Now, what is salt good for? If you believe in evolution at all, that life began in the ocean when animals evolved to come out on land. We took the ocean with us. It's still circulating in our body. It's called our bloodstream, and it has roughly the same salt concentration that salt water does. And that's very important because all the chemical reactions in our body take place in this salt water solution. So you need a little salt to keep your chemistry going. It's not evil stuff. You need some. It's essential for life. And also, a solution of salt water conducts electricity. And that's really important because we are electrical beings. Every time you flex your muscle or fire off a nerve, electrical impulses are going up and down, and you need some sodium and chloride to do that. So salt's essential for life. However, we tend to eat way too much of it. So what's wrong with eating too much salt? Boy, we sure love salty things. We'll eat it when it's just caked right on the surface there for everyone to see. What's wrong with eating too much of it? Well, as soon as you eat a salty meal, the salt gets into your bloodstream and your blood starts becoming saltier and saltier and saltier, and that is not a good thing. Why? Because if your blood gets too salty, the high salt concentration is going to start pulling water out of your cells, and they will dehydrate and die. You will start to pickle on the inside is what happens. And I mean that literally. How do you make a pickle? You take a cucumber and you do what? You put it into salt water, right? And the concentration of salt is so high in the brine solution that it pulls water out of that cucumber and turns it into a floppy pickle. Well, that's what would happen to your brain if your blood gets too salty. That's what would happen to your heart and your kidneys and your adrenals. Your body will not permit that. Nature looks out for us. So as soon as your brain detects that your blood is getting too salty, it immediately wants to lower the salt concentration, and it does it in a very ingenious way. How do you lower the salt concentration in your blood? Like you lower salt concentration anywhere, add water, dilute it out. Well, how do we add water to the bloodstream? Well, body knows how to do that in 2 ways, actually. First of all, you get thirsty, and you go over to the water cooler, and you pour yourself a pint of water, and you drink it down, and you add a pint of water to your bloodstream to dilute out the salt concentration. Also, as the brain detects that your blood is getting salty, a little chemical messenger goes from your brain down to your kidneys, anti-diuretic hormone, and this molecule tells the kidneys, hey kidneys, you know that water you were going to excrete out in the urine? We needed to dilute out the salt in the bloodstream, so hold on to that water. And the kidneys say, aye, aye, and they retain water. And sure enough, the blood gets more watery and the salt concentration goes down. Brilliant! Two elegant mechanisms that dilute the salt in your blood, keep the salt concentration normal, and let you eat another pretzel another day. Well, that's all very nice. We dilute it out, but we pay a price for that. What's the price? Well, normally you've got about 8 pints of blood circulating around your body. Well, you drink on a couple of pints, you retain a pint or so of water through your kidneys, and suddenly you're pumping around 9 pints of fluid, 10 pints of fluid in your bloodstream. That has consequences. People notice it after airline flights and standing all day. People who eat a high salt diet know their ankles are swollen. That's called edema. And they notice their tissues feel more bloaty, and they put on weight because water is heavy. 62 pounds per cubic foot. But these are mostly cosmetic issues. From the physician's point of view, I'm concerned about what a high salt load and the resulting dilution of it out in the bloodstream does to your blood pressure. Ask any plumber what happens when you add more fluid to the piping system. The pressure in the system goes up. Here you see it. Here's normal amount of blood going through normal blood vessels, but you put too much blood volume through normal piping system and the pressure is going to go up. Salt in the bloodstream in high concentrations day after day does something else. It actually seeps into the walls of the arteries. Your arteries are muscular tubes that are constantly relaxing and constricting as you go upstairs, as you sleep. They're amazingly responsive organs, and they need this elasticity and this give. Also, every time your heart beats and a wave of pressure comes out of your heart, the arteries, if they're nice and elastic, they absorb some of that shock wave that comes out of the heart to make it easy on the tissues throughout the body. But you keep your blood salty from a high salt diet, and the salt oozes into the walls of the arteries and they become stiff. And then when that heart beats and that pressure wave comes slamming down this now rigid piping tubing of your arteries, that pressure wave slams into some very delicate tissues throughout the body, and that has some very bad effects. First of all, it's hard on the piping system itself. The artery walls, if you expose them to high pressure month after month, year after year, heartbeat after heartbeat, after a while, as the months and years go by, the inside of the artery walls begin to crack. Tiny little splits and cracks appear in the inside of the artery walls. And in order to patch the cracks, the body starts laying down cholesterol plaques. There's a strong theory that one of the early stimuli for creating plaques in your arteries is the high pressure causing cracks inside the arteries. There's an old saying, you're as old as your arteries, as old as your arteries. If your arteries are supple and wide open, you're a young person no matter what the date is on your birth certificate. And if your arteries are stiff and all clogged up, you're an old man or an old woman no matter when you were born. You want to take care of your arteries. High blood pressure is hard on them. Let me be a physician here and show you exactly how the high blood pressure damages your body. It's hardest on the very delicate tissues in the body like the retina of your eye. This is an amazing structure, of course, lets us convert light into vision. And the cells of the retina are really remarkable. This is what the doctor sees when we have you on the exam table and we turn the lights down, we take our ophthalmoscope and we're looking in the back of your eye. This is what we're looking at. This is the retina, this is the optic nerve, and the retinal artery comes in with the optic nerve. It has 4 branches to it, and it delivers highly oxygenated blood to these very active cells out in the retina, and you need them to see. But these arteries, and they're divided into small and smaller arterioles and finally little capillaries. They're very fragile, one cell thin. They do not stand up to high pressure. Well, you slam a pressure wave, heartbeat after heartbeat, against these very delicate blood vessels, and as the years go by, some bad things happen. That lovely architecture turns into something like this. These red blotches here, these are retinal hemorrhages. You are looking at bleeds inside the retinal tissues, and wherever this has happened, oxygenated blood that was going to the retinal cells is now just leaking out into the surrounding area. The retinal cells dependent upon that blood flow die from lack of oxygen, and as a result, you get retinal scars throughout the visual area, and the person develops blind spots. This is hypertensive retinopathy. This is why people with uncontrolled high blood pressure go blind. Serious business. Your kidneys are another organs that get it in the neck, so to speak, from high blood pressure. 25% of every heartbeat's blood comes into your kidneys for filtration, comes into the renal arteries. The blood is brought out to the outside of the kidneys, into the renal cortex here. The blood is essentially taken apart, run through some very delicate filters. What the body does not want to retain in the bloodstream goes out in the urine through the ureter, and the blood is reassembled and put into the renal vein back into circulation. So these are amazing structures, your kidneys, and the filtration happens in these very delicate structures called the glomeruli. These are gossamer filters. They're one cell thin, and your life depends upon them, and every one is precious. When they're gone, they're gone. And they're so fragile, they do not stand up to high blood pressure. Well, you pound away at them hour after hour, year after year, and what you get is this lovely architecture turns into something like this. These are glomerular hemorrhages, and this person is losing kidney function with every heartbeat, and with uncontrolled high blood pressure, it's an express ticket to the dialysis unit or getting your name on the renal transplant list. High blood pressure is hard on the tissues. And the most feared consequence of uncontrolled high blood pressure are strokes. If the plaque forms in a small blood vessel going to the brain, a little clot appears there, it'll seal off the blood flow to the far areas of the brain, which then die from lack of blood flow. That's an ischemic stroke. If the pressure is so high it just absolutely blows out a blood vessel and you bleed into the brain as a hemorrhagic stroke, they're both catastrophes, and these are results of uncontrolled high blood pressure. By the way, if you suspect a stroke, if you're talking with someone or someone calls you, a loved one or a friend, and they've got some disturbing symptoms, they are not talking properly. The signs that we look for, by the way, are three actually. One, I look at their face. If one side of their face is suddenly drooping, I then have them close their eyes and put their arms up in front of them, and if their arm on the same side as the facial droop begins to go down, I get very worried they've had a stroke. I then ask them to say the Gettysburg Address, and if it comes out because they can't form the consonants with their muscle strength, at this point, you've got evidence they're having a stroke. Your move is to pick up the phone and call 911. If you can get them to the hospital within 2 hours, you can often have the stroke reversed. So salt is not evil. We need it for mineral balance and electrical energy. Too much of it stiffens your arteries, raises your blood pressure, and that can lead to absolutely ugly things like strokes and blindness, kidney failure, heart failure, etc. So how much do you need? What is a reasonable salt intake? First of all, before we get into the numbers, let me say again, natural whole foods are not a problem. The concentration of salt in the salad and in the beans is the same concentration of salt in your bloodstream, and you're not going to run into any problems if you eat natural whole foods, foods as grown. But the scientists tell us that an ideal sodium intake is between 1,500 and 2,000 milligrams a day. Well, whoopee-doo, what do you do with that number? I mean, what's a milligram? Well, that's 1.5 to 2 grams a day. 1,000 milligrams in a gram. 2 grams a day. Well, what do you do with that number? Those of you who are not old enough to remember the 60s may not know what a gram is. So how do you hang this onto something that makes some sense? Well, a penny weighs 3 grams, okay? A penny weighs 3,000 milligrams, okay? So now, if you need between 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams, that comes down to be about 1/2 to 2/3 of a penny weight of salt. That's about what you need. That's about 1/4 to 1/3 of a teaspoon. There's a reasonable amount. If you hold your total salt intake, if say half of it is already in the veggies, you got a little bit to sprinkle on your food, and a little bit goes a long, long way. Now, That's nice when you're at the dining room table, but you're pushing your cart down the supermarket aisle looking at labels. What do you do with 2,000 milligrams a day? How do you turn that into practical information while you're shopping? Here's how. And with a nod of appreciation to our friend Jeff Novick, who tuned me into this simple equation. If you need 2,000 milligrams of sodium a day, and you eat 2,000 calories a day, roughly, then the ratio is 1 milligram of sodium for every calorie, okay? So this is a handy thing to know when you're looking at labels. Here's a label of a popular brand of soup, tomato soup. 1 serving is 1/2 cup. I don't know who consumes a 1/2 cup of tomato soup as a serving, but let's say you do here. And we see here that the calories are 90 calories. Well, if there's 90 calories in a serving and at 1 milligram of sodium per every calorie, how many milligrams of sodium should there be? 90. How many are there? 710. The folks at the soup companies, all processed food companies, learned long ago that adding salt to food does 2 things. 1, it makes the product last a long time on the shelf, and the soups will last years. If you add salt, the concentration of salt is so high, bacteria won't grow in it. People have been salting food for a long time to preserve it. And also, when you add salt to food, it brings out the flavor, and it makes people thirsty, and they wind up eating and drinking more. So, processed foods are going to have a lot of salt in it. You can bet on it. Here's somebody's macaroni and cheese. 1 serving has 250 calories. Should have 250 milligrams of sodium. How much does it have? 470. You can bet that every box you open, every can you open, every jar you open is loaded with salt unless it says low sodium. And even then, we've been told, don't believe anything you see on the front of the package. Look on the back and actually see if there's more than 1 milligram per calorie. Let's take a look at our vaunted pretzel here. Sorry about that, but we're going to have a look at it. 163 calories. What's the sodium concentration? Sure, 588. You can see it crusted out there. Processed foods are loaded with salt. So what do? Know that packaged, prepared, processed foods are predictably loaded with the stuff, and avoid them as much as you can. The same with restaurant food, which we'll be dealing with in a minute. That tastes so good when it comes out of the kitchen there because there's so much salt in it. And people go into heart failure after restaurant meals because of it. So the adage, as Michael Pollan told us, eat food, not edible food-like substances out of brightly colored packages and boxes. Eat food, you know, that's what he's talking about. You want to eat food as grown, as Dr. Hans Diehl tells us. You want potatoes, eat potatoes, not potato chips, okay? You want to eat corn, wonderful. Eat corn, not corn chips. Eat food as grown and you'll stay out of trouble. But I'm a saltaholic, a recovering saltaholic, and I love my salt, and so do a lot of some of my patients. What do? The safest and best thing to do is entertain your tongue with non-salty flavorings. At our clinic, when you go through the dining room line, there's a tray of cut lemon slices. I've learned to squeeze lemon juice on everything in our clinic. I squeeze it on the greens, squeeze it on the lentils, squeeze it on the soup. The taste buds for sour that are stimulated by the lemons are right next to the taste buds for salt. And if you squeeze lemon juice on your greens, you get a salty flavoring or salty sensation without the actual sodium. Second, there's a whole world now of flavored vinegars, raspberry vinegars, fig vinegars, balsamic vinegars. Enjoy them. They're nutritionally free, and they certainly bring out the flavor of foods without having to add salt to them. Finally, you can make your own salt substitutes. Just Google homemade salt substitutes, and you put a bunch of spices in a coffee grinder and whiz them up, and there's some lovely salt substitutes available. There's a commercial one called Benson's Table Tasty. I have no connection with the company, but it's a lovely seasoning. It's nutritional yeast with a bunch of dried herbs in it. It tastes salty, but there's no salt in it. You can order that off the internet. There's no excuse to where I have to salt my food. Lots of things to have in the meantime. If you have to use it, if you're, for some reason, you had a sweaty day out in the garden there, or if your body's really craving salt, then add it at the table. Don't add it while you're cooking, because you can put huge amounts in while you're cooking and not even feel it. And remember, just a few sprinkles of salt goes a long way. You hold it to less than 1/8 of a teaspoon in every meal. Just a pinch is all you really need. Now people say, well, what about tamari sauce and soy sauce? Again, they're loaded with salt. They don't do great things for you. And if you've got high blood pressure, you have no business using them. But if you absolutely insist on using them, then get yourself a spray bottle, fill it half full of your salty seasonings and half full of water, dilute it out 50-50, and then just a couple of spritzes on your veggies goes a long way. You get a lot of coverage and a lot of salty flavoring without using that much sodium. So there are things that you can do, but by and large, don't kid yourself. As the toxicologists say with any substance, as it builds up in the body, the dose makes the poison. You know, everybody can handle a little bit of arsenic, but a lot of it has fatal results. The same thing with salt, and not to kid yourself, use as little as you possibly can. When it comes to adding salt in any form, less is more. Okay, it's already in the foods. Eat whole foods. Okay, so much for salt. Let's move on to sugar. What is it? Sugars are rings of carbon atoms. I'm not going to turn this into a chemistry lesson, but this is a fun one to follow because it leads you to a term that you've heard before but may not have understood. Here is a diagram of a molecule of sugar. It's called glucose, and each of these gray globes here, these are atoms of carbon. This one has 6 atoms of carbon in a ring. Now, green plants make sugars, and they do it quite poetically. They do it from the air and the rain and the sun. From the air, they take 6 molecules of carbon dioxide. And from the rain, they take 6 molecules of water, and they do something interesting. Here's that sugar molecule again, and here's the C's. These are carbon atoms. But look, each carbon atom has an interesting group of molecules or atoms hanging onto it. Here's an HOH, 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 HOH. HOH. Does that ring a bell in anyone's mind? It should. That's the formula for water, of course. And so what the plant has done is taken the 6 atoms of carbon from carbon dioxide, put them in a ring, and it's taken 6 molecules of water. And for a split second,